there was arguments before the Supreme Court, like a half day's worth of arguments over reining in bureaucracies in the government. There were a couple of fishing companies that were ordered to pay for inspectors to be on their boat. And they said, nah, that exceeds your level of authority granted from Congress. They challenged it, and there was a doctrine called the Chevron doctrine that was used to throw them out of court, basically. And what this doctrine stands for is that if the Congress passes a law and a situation comes up where the law is ambiguous about how to handle it, if a bureaucracy comes up with a reasonable regulation of how to handle it, the courts have to defer to the experts in the agency. And for all of us who have dealt with bureaucratic agencies, you know that calling experts in a bureaucracy, it's a stretch. It's a stretch. It turns out to be political. And so there's been fights now for years about how do we rein bureaucracies in. And what some of the argument here goes back to a case called Marbury versus Madison in the Thomas Jefferson administration, where the Supreme Court Chief Justice said, look, we have the power and the right to look at any law Congress passes and hold it up to the Constitution. If it's not constitutional, we'll throw it out. We have three branches of government. Congress passes laws, they're Article 1. The executive branch carries the laws out, they're Article 2. And the courts are Article 3. They take a look at the laws and they'll shit can them if they don't meet constitutional muster. Well, the Chevron doctrine, it tied the hands of a court, because even if a judge looked at a regulation and looked at the enabling statute and said, you know, this is ambiguous, but what I see happening here, I don't agree with. But as long as it's reasonable, I can't say anything. The bureaucracy wins every time. Well, about a year and a half ago, there was a case, West Virginia versus the EPA went to the Supreme Court. And West Virginia argued that the Environmental Protection Act does not give the EPA the authority to change the way that energy is produced in this country. The generational change, they called it. This is a big question. It's got to go back to Congress for Congress to grant you the authority to do what this regulatory agency is doing. Okay. Now, this is a bit of that same theme in that these boat owners who were herring fishermen, they were forced to pay for an inspector to be on the boat, and they said, no, you don't have the authority to do that. We're going to challenge it. Okay. So the court yesterday, we now have a conservative majority. And I've been warning people, telling them for a while, that this conservative majority is going to take a baseball bat to some of these long-standing principles. The Chevron doctrine has been part of administrative law since 1984. And judges complain bitterly about it. But in our system, when the Supreme Court says something, you kind of have to follow it. Okay. Well, the government argued, oh, this would just mess everything up. People would sue everybody. It would be a terrible problem. And the affected party said, hang on, at what point does the government's authority run out? These regulatory agencies are too far off the front of their surfboard. We need to stop this kind of nonsense. Now, if you look at anybody that was writing about this yesterday, they were all trying to read the tea leaves. What does a question mean? What does an answer mean? I honestly don't know. I think this court is primed right now to require these agencies to have a clear directive from Congress through enabling statutes. And if you don't have that, I think they're going to figure out a way to determine what's ambiguous about a statute and what's reasonable and find a middle ground here at a minimum. So this is a continuing argument about how much power the administrative bureaucracies out there have. How can you check that power? And this tension point between businesses trying to run where the regulations kill the business, like the cannabis industry, and the legislative body's power to control some particular area of human business and interaction. So it's kind of deep. We'll watch this because it's going to very much affect a lot of administrative agencies around the country, and it should have some spillover effect into states. The catalyst It's sort of the same problem where an agency decides to change the rules in midstream and then make them retroactive, and you go, hang on, you can't be doing this shit. Well, let's see if the courts will step in.
Well. Dale just froze on us.
That was his finishing argument. That's how he does it. He just freezes the screen like it's a mic drop, only it's visual.
I think it was Gavin and did it to him because he started talking about all of this government control and everything. Just incited to have him.
I think I'm back.
There he is.
I didn't do anything special, I swear. Sitting there, looking stupid like the T.O. Loco that I am.
Oh man, Dale. I mean, so with this case, this could definitely have long-lasting implications, and could also too. Let's just say if the Catalyst case was gone through and was given a unfavorable ruling, then what you're telling me is if this case happened afterwards, it could actually reverse that unfavorable ruling due to the fact that it's the Supreme Court. Am I correct on that?
Well, it's apples and oranges. California doesn't suffer from the Chevron rule. Oh, we have different issues to deal with, but at a federal level, and when cannabis, we've got the Department of Agriculture, we've got the Food and Drug Administration, we've got HHS, we've got the DEA. All of these agencies have promulgated regulations, okay? And each of them have said things about cannabinoids that we've had to deal with. And when this Chevron rule is put into place, if there's any reasonableness about their regulations, then the court's hands are tied. I just don't think that's correct. We've battled in court many times over the Controlled Substances Act, and we're fighting the DEA, and all the courts will say, well, the DEA has the authority to, oversee this, and we're going to force them to go to the next step. We could never challenge any of the underlying rules and regulations. We just were standing there on our virile member after putting on a great case. I think we'll have some more room now to challenge these at the court level. And if a district court judge says, I don't care what your experts say, this is, in legal terms, it's bullshit. We're not going to uphold this regulations. It's being thrown out, and you can go back to Congress and ask for the specific authority to do what you're trying to do right now. I think that would give a lot more power to the average person and to businesses to have a fighting chance in a battle like this.
Fair enough. You had any thoughts on this, Yarrow?
I do.
Okay.
When he says that the court's hands are tied, but he's already used that expression, virile member, twice, I'm thinking the courts are actually in furry handcuffs and that this ruling might unlock those. It's interesting for me because as I explore my own opinions and thoughts around this, I'm not totally opposed to regulatory agencies passing through to business the cost of regulating those businesses. The line in the sand for me is when regulatory agencies create revenue-producing fee structures that actually exceed the cost of them regulating those businesses. So that's kind of where my line in the sand is.
Well, they have to provide for all those services that they gaslight everybody about, Yarrow. How else are they going to pay for those?
Well, he said it was a Chevron ruling. So for gaslighting, Chevron is a major provider of gas. So I think we're good.
Mixed metaphor. I love it. I love it.
You guys are.
Well, as an attorney, it's just very disappointing to get into court, put a great case on, and the judge goes, that's wonderful, but I have to defer to an agency which has flip-flopped like a fish out of water with every political administration that comes in. That's how this tends to come in. They put in their own heads of these agencies, and then they start passing rules and regulations that may be outside the bounds of the enabling statute.
Yeah, I mean, I hear all of that. I'm just happy that the flip-flopping of fishes is not yet another trip to Alaska undisclosed for Supreme Court justice. And so at least they're in their chambers and doing their job versus taking a billionaire's jet to yet another vacation.
What's the matter with taking billionaires' jets places, bro? How do you think we get around?
Because they land you in islands and they put your name on it and then they hide your name.
Oh, boy.
Or they have little children there that no one wants you to know about.
Yes.
And Epstein didn't kill himself.
Epstein, yeah, that's true.
No.
Epstein did not kill himself. That's true.
Not in a secure federal facility that I was in. No, he didn't do it.
No.
Not in the suicide watch area either. No.
Me either.
Not buying that. Not buying that. But there is a crazy epidemic that's been happening across the country that's called suicidedness.
I thought it was called Clinton side.
Yeah,
but it's another day.
Yeah, it's the same thing.